The next benefit we're going to talk about is life insurance. And during this video, we'll talk about both whole life insurance and term life insurance, as well as some of the differences between a group life plan and an individual life plan. All options that we can offer through Colonial Life for our employers and their employees. I think the number one reason, though, that people will get into a life plan through Colonial is because, number one, the convenience of payroll deduction. And the lower rates that are associated with that. Furthermore, because we're doing this through a group, we're typically able to offer some really creative underwriting plans for the employees. One of which is what we call guarantee issue, which simply means that when an employee is enrolling into a benefit, they may not have to answer health questions to get enrolled. And so for larger groups where you may have employees that have a prior poor health history, maybe something like diabetes or high blood pressure, typically those are things that might hinder you from getting a life insurance policy. Well, with Colonial Life and our guarantee issue products, you're able to get into a life policy even with that health background. So some of the reasons that people might get life insurance: covering burial and final expenses is one that we see, especially with whole life insurance. Replacing lost income from a wage earner, transferring wealth or inheritance across generations, some additional retirement income if they can outlive that policy, or just helping to pay off a mortgage. One of the ones that we see a lot of is if we have, maybe it's a family and a breadwinner in that family wants to make sure that when they go, their house is taken care of. That's a really good reason to get a solid term life policy. Our policies vary in how much coverage you can get. We can go up to $2 million on a term life policy. So a lot of flexibility for the employees. Just to kind of go into some basics about the term versus the whole, a term life policy is for a select period of time. So for Colonial, we can do different timelines based on the employees. So if one employee needs a 10-year coverage or a 10-year term policy and another employee needs a 30-year term policy, we can do that. But again, this is for major financial obligations to be covered. So things like student loans, mortgage payments, and childcare. Typically, the term life policy is going to be a little bit less expensive than a whole life policy. The easiest way I like to explain this to a plan administrator is, with a term life policy, you rent the policy, versus a whole life policy, you own that policy. And so think about the expenses that go into you owning a home versus renting a home. When you own the home, you're investing in that property, you're paying mortgage, there's probably additional expenses that you don't think about that hit you. So it's a little bit more expensive, but you own that. And so the whole life policy, you own that policy. And what that simply means is that the coverage is permanent. You cannot outlive a whole life policy. So if I got a whole life policy today, I'm going to pay the same rate today that I'm going to pay when I'm 80. So that's the serious advantage of that policy. And that's a big reason why people use a whole life policy for burial expenses, is they can guarantee that they'll have a life insurance policy when that time comes. One of the other advantages to a whole life policy is that it also has a cash buildup that you can pull from years down the road. That cash buildup has an interest rate that's guaranteed. It's right around 4%. So a lot of people will take a whole life policy and use it as a financial tool so that they can take that money and utilize it toward, maybe it's house expenses, home improvements, maybe it's for tuition for a child. It's your money to pull from that based on guaranteed interest. Now, a lot of people will do a combination of both term and whole life. And I'll use my own personal story for this. I have a $500,000 term life policy where I know that if I go, my son's college tuition can be paid for and our house can be paid off. So if I'm not here, my family does not have to stress about those financial obligations. I also have a small $50,000 whole life policy. Now, while the policy isn't all that much, I know I'm going to have $50,000 when I pass away. to cover my funeral expenses. And again, I'll pay the same rate that I pay now that I'm paying at 70. I actually got a policy that's paid out at age 70. So if I outlive that policy, I'll collect on that. But of course, if I go anytime beyond that, I'll know that I'm covered. Um, Now, the stat here on the sheet shows that 7 in 10 Americans say they need life insurance coverage. It continues to be a massive gap in our marketplace. It's something that especially younger employees may not be thinking about, but it's a benefit that when you're younger, it's going to be less expensive than when you're older. I always tell employees the best time to buy life insurance is right now because you will never be younger than you are right this second. So we do a lot of both term and whole with our groups. Again, coverage options are available for both you, your spouse, and dependents. They're typically tax-free benefits for the beneficiary. You keep the benefit upon retirement, and you can get a portion of the benefit while you're still alive, depending on the riders that you add on. So we encourage employees to go through both options when they sit with a benefit counselor. This sheet shows some of the details around both of the benefits that we have. One thing it does not list that I'll briefly go into is our group term life policy. On the group side, our life insurance coverage is a very low rate with guarantee issue underwriting across the board for all employees. Now, the type of group that would work with a group term life plan would be anyone that has more than 10 employees that might be looking to cover a portion of or all of the cost for their team. And so an easy example of this would be that 10-person group where they want to offer a flat $20,000 life insurance benefit to employees for working with that company. Now, on that plan, it's going to be guarantee issue. As long as the employee is working for that company, they will receive that benefit. If they leave the company, they can take the benefit with them. We call that a convertible plan, which means they may need to provide evidence of insurability to keep that policy, but certainly can. So there are a lot of different ways that we offer the life insurance coverage. We put it into most of our groups. And we stress that it's either guaranteed issue, meaning no health questions asked, or potentially on the term life insurance side, simplified issue, which means there's only a few basic health questions to get enrolled depending on how much coverage you're looking for. And as long as you don't hit certain amounts, you're not forced to do any sort of blood work or anything like that. So the idea being that you can get a lot of life insurance through payroll deduction without it costing you too much, and really with the ease of knowing that you don't have to go through a crazy underwriting process to get issued these policies.